Wow, thank you very much. I don't know how to follow such an amazing MC. Um, but it's really awesome to be here. It's my first time in Portland, in Oregon. I'm trying to, I'm trying to collect all the states. I'm like 5 states down, so you got a lot of states here. Jesus. Yeah, what an amazing conference. So today, my talk is called Building a 5-Star App, and I'm going to be talking specifically about app reviews. So why they're important, why people care about them, and also what you as a developer can do to improve your app review and your app score rating. So this is the mandatory About Me slide. My name is Kadi Kraman, and I've done some courses on Project Masters and Egghead, but my day job, I'm a head of mobile services at Formidable. So we're a digital agency. We build things in React, GraphQL, and of course, most importantly, React Native. So to jump right in today's world, we are spoiled for choice for pretty much every single option we have. So choosing which conference to go. How many conferences are there in the US? Hundreds. Which shoes to buy, which hotel to book, where to go on holiday, which app to download. And in a lot of ways, this is a good thing because we're all different and we require different things. We have different budgets, different needs. But it's also a bad thing because for every single choice, rather than having just one option or 2 options, we have 20 options and we need to now analyze all of them. So we're not just spoiled for choice, we're exhausted by the choices we have. So there's been quite a lot of research on this, and they kind of suggest that an average adult makes around 35,000 more or less conscious decisions every day. So this is not just the decisions about how to spend your money, it's decisions like, what time do I get up? What do I wear today? What time do I go to a conference? Should I go in for the 3rd talk? And you did, so thank you for that. And it's stressful. And it leads to this thing called decision fatigue. And it basically means that the more decisions you make, the worse you become at making them. So you can think of it as in the morning, you wake up with your decision-making tank full. And with every decision you make, you're going to use up a little bit of that decision-making juice. And then come the end of the day, you're making really bad decisions because you don't have the energy, because your tank is empty. You're just going to look at the data and go, I don't care, I'm choosing one at random. And there's a bunch of ways that people have tried to mitigate this. One of the things that you might have heard of is a couple of well-known people have said that they wear the same thing every single day. And the reason they do that is they found something that works, and if they take that choice out of the day, and they can just save all their decision-making juice for the important things like, running a country, building a Mac, etc. And this leads us to reviews. So reviews are basically a tool that we as humans have created for ourselves to help us choose between this plethora of options for every single thing in our lives. And online reviews are almost as old as the internet. So the internet became mainstream, kind of popular in the 1990s, and the first online reviews appeared in 1999. And they were on eBay and a couple of other sites that I admit I've never heard of, were mostly eBay, and they were about sellers. So it was reviews on sellers and products. So whether they were legit, whether the things that they sold were good. It's not working. Okay. Hello. Wow, that's the biggest applause I've had. Cool. So where were we at? Okay, so eBay reviews. I've got some stats. I love stats. 72% of potential customers say that they're not going to make a purchase without first reading the reviews. This one's interesting. 90% of millennials, so this is people born in the 80s, 90s, which is most of this room, I'm in that group, say that they trust online reviews as much as they trust reviews from friends and family, which is crazy to me, but also true. And customers say that they read between 4 to 10 reviews like before deciding on their purchase. And half of them say that the amount of reviews matters more to them than the actual rating. So this effectively means that if you had, on the App Store, if you had a 4.8 rating with 10 reviews, that matters less than if you had a 4.6 rating with 10,000 reviews. So all this is to say that reviews matter. They are like the first thing that your customer sees when they go to your App Store page. It is their first impression of your app. If your app is in a market that's already quite crowded, for example, in e-commerce, if you have other competitors, then it could be the make or break for your app. And even if they download it, it's going to predispose them like for or against. They already have an opinion formed before they download it. Now, we're all React Native developers here, and we're in this fun world where we work with both iOS and Android. And I think, as with almost everything in React Native, the two platforms are same but different. They're like just different enough to make it annoying. And same goes for reviews. Gotta come here to make sure I get the numbers right. But this was basically done by taking 1,000 apps from the iOS and the Android app stores and just running some stats on them. And we found that the average app has, on the App Store, has a 4.5 star rating and an average of about 450 reviews. But on the Android store, it has an average of just a 4-star rating and 2,500 Google reviews. So from this, we can see that there are more Android users on average than there are iOS users, and they seem to, on average, have a worse experience or they're more critical. And one thing to note that the US and the UK actually were in the same boat that is quite unique globally, that we have slightly more iOS users than Android users, whereas the rest of the world is Android heavy. So something to note depending on what you're building. Another thing that's interesting is how rating is calculated is actually different between the stores. On iOS, believe it or not, for once, it is simpler. It is just an arithmetic average of all the reviews, or all the ratings your app has ever received. So you add them all together and divide it by the number of reviews. On Android, the ratings are actually weighted. So the latest reviews on the latest version of the app have more weight than the older ones. So this means that if you publish a version of your app and you've done a lot of bug fixes and you get an influx of 5-star reviews, your app review is actually going to go up faster than it would if you just did it mathematically. And if you pay attention to review, you'll see that your Android review tends to fluctuate quite a bit, whereas on iOS, it tends to be stable. And lastly, if you ever published an app on iOS, you've probably seen this. There's a section where you can choose to reset your rating. So this doesn't reset the reviews. The reviews will still be visible, but the rating number is going to start counting again. And Android doesn't have an equivalent. All right, that was the prequel. Let's talk about how to actually build a 5-star app. I broke it into 2 sections. And basically, there's 2 parts of it. Firstly, we want to prevent common complaints. And this is something that basically comes with experience. The more apps you build, the more you know what the common complaints are. And you can mitigate them before your app even goes to the App Store. And the second and more important part is that we're going to talk about asking for positive reviews. So preempting common complaints. This might vary from your experience. I've tried to tone it down to as few as I could, so I've just done 2 things. We've got app crashes, and we've gone payments and paid content. Who here knows what an error boundary is? Okay, yeah, most people. Who currently has an error boundary in their app? Okay, I would say that maybe like a third. So for the other 2/3, I'm going to tell you what an error boundary is and why you should have one in your app. So here's some code I wrote, which is pretty obviously wrong. I know it's wrong, you know it's wrong. TypeScript, no, it's wrong, is trying to warn me, but I'm going to run it anyway. And if I add it to our website and I open the DevTools, I'm getting this type error. What happens to the website? Really not a lot. I mean, it's still working. If I open, a lot of these errors, to be fair, because I have an ad block on, but there's a few JavaScript errors kind of sprinkled in there. So there's a lot of drama going on in a console, but on the front page, well, it's different kind of drama, but you can still see everything. What happens if I do the same in a React Native app? I mean, this is a screen that we are probably all familiar with. If you've never seen it before, you are a legend. I don't know how you do it, please tell me. And then we fix the error and we're good. But what happens if we leave it in and we get this in production? So this is a screenshot of an Android app that encountered a JavaScript error in production. And you can see we actually get a native alert that says, oh no, something went wrong. And we can just bail out of it and the app crashes completely, the app process ends, oh, we need to restart. And that is probably the worst user experience that you could have. And we want to avoid it at all costs. So this was introduced in React 16, so it's been around for a little while. And it's basically a couple of methods on a class component. I know classes, right? If you're allergic to classes like me, this is my only class. And I put it away from all the other components. But it's a very useful class. Or you can use a library. But yeah, basically what it does is it's a component where you implement get derived state from error and component did catch, and it allows you to see if the wrapped children had a JavaScript error. You can catch the error, and you can provide an alternate UI to show. And if you don't want to build it yourself, you can use this handy NPM library, which is what I do. And this is just an example. So in this example, we've wrapped an error boundary along the whole app. And if there's a JavaScript error, we can show our own kind of fallback screen. So our own copy, our own design, something friendly to a user that says, sorry, we messed up. But the app doesn't crash. We have a button that allows us to reset the app state so you can continue your app flow. And actually, because the error boundary is just a React component, you could have error boundaries on all of your app navigation screens. So for each screen, you could have a profile error boundary, which means that if you have a JavaScript error inside that profile page, the rest of your screens will still work. So we're kind of coding defensively. Secondly, and this relates to the previous one as well, we want to communicate errors to the user as much as possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's literally as something went wrong, we're really sorry. But if you know what went wrong and what the user can do, tell them. Because there's nothing more frustrating than going to check out with your card and it says something's wrong with your card details, or we couldn't check out. And you're like, what's wrong? But actually maybe it was just your CVV that was wrong, which you would get from the API. And we want to monitor errors. Whatever error logging you use, I usually use Sentry. We want to keep an eye on influxes of errors. So this is a screenshot that unfortunately is in an app that I'm very familiar with. And you can see here that an error started to occur maybe 7 days ago and has continued to occur. So this tells me that there's two options. Either the latest app release introduced something that's causing this error, or the other option is that an API released something that's causing this error. So I'm going to go into this error and try to fix it. I'm hoping that it's API, because it will be easier to fix than the app. And lastly, on this section, you want to monitor your releases. And what I mean by monitoring your releases is whenever you submit to the stores, both iOS and Android have a ability to stage your rollout. They work a bit differently because, of course, they do. But you can just roll out to 10% on Android and then do stage releases on iOS. and just keep an eye on your app and see if there's an influx of errors, in which case you can roll back and fix them. For example, I once introduced a bug that if the user opens the app and then goes to airplane mode and goes off, it crashes, which was very bad. But we caught it early and we fixed it. So the second section around mitigating errors that you know users are going to hate is anything regarding payments. So, I mean, Josh had an awesome workshop around testing, and I think a lot of people here don't need to be convinced that testing is useful. But I think we all know that if you have limited developer resources, you just don't have the capacity to invest in 100% test coverage. So you need to prioritize. And if you're going to prioritize one area of your app, let it be payments. So as soon as you take a person's money, if you have paid content, for example, if it's unlockable content, then that's the bit that you want to make sure that works. For example, if you have an app that does video streaming, you need to make sure that those streams work for those paid customers, because they're the ones that are going to be extra grumpy. All right, something a bit different. Before we go on, I want everyone to reflect on the fact that app reviews are not just a reflection of your app, but of the whole user experience. I think as developers, because we're the ones building the app, we're the ones submitting them, we're the ones seeing the rating, and often we're the ones that are responsible for making the rating high, we find the reviews like a personal, like a reflection of our work. But it's not just our work. The customers don't just go, oh, the app was good, but my food never got here. So, yeah. I mean, it's the best example of that is DoorDash, Deliveroo, Uber. If you look at the ratings, if you look at the reviews for those companies, a lot of the time the reviews are not about the app at all. They're not about, oh, this button didn't work or it crashes or whatever. It's about the driver delivering the food to someone else. And there's two types of negative reviews. So this is the good type. This is the one that we like as developers because they're the one that we can do something about. They're negative reviews that, for example, are bug reports or app crashes or misleading UX. So say that a customer says that they can't find where the hell the search button is. And you're like, there is a search button, but it has a shoe on it, not like a looking glass. So the customer couldn't find it. And then there are the other reviews, the ones that are out of control. And I mean, I very much would like to hear the crazy reviews that you've got, because I think we need to share in the pain. I have some stories that I haven't put in the slide, so catch me later. But these will be things like service downtime. So say that your payment provider went down. It's not your fault, but the customer can't pay. So you're annoyed at your service provider, and the customer's annoyed at you, and you're the one that gets the bad review. And then, of course, you just have people who are having a bad day, and they decided that your app is the one that's going to get some angry words. But the point is, you're always going to get some bad reviews, no matter what you do. So let's just see what that means for our app rating. I like maths, so I just did some maths. This is my excuse to basically do maths. But say that you had an app that had a 1-star review and a 5-star review. So mathematically, this gives your app a 3-star rating. How many 5-star reviews do you need to counter a single 1-star review? I think our MC would know. He's very good at maths. No, I'm joking. I mean, you're good at maths. I've got some maths on my slides. Check this out.
You didn't count a thing, but you're good.
God damn it. I'm sorry. All right, so this is a formula that basically, so the X stands for the number of 5-star reviews that are needed, and then the target is the App Store rating that you want to get. So if I just plug some numbers in there, you can see that if you have a 1-star review, you need 7 5-star reviews to get to a 4.7 rating. And if you want to aim high and go to 4.9, you need 39 5-star reviews. So it does make an impact. and you need to bridge that gap somehow. And the way you do it is you need to ask for positive reviews. Now, the reason this is problematic is because our human nature is we're expecting things to be good, right? We kind of have this base level of expectation, and the threshold for complaints is like much lower than like saying good things, right? So you're much more likely to say bad things when things aren't going your way, but things need to be absolutely exceptional for you to give some praise. So how many times have you actually looked up an app on the App and Play Store to rate it positively? If it's more than once, then you're better than me. But think of the last hotel you stayed at. So it could be this hotel, but if you're staying over, but maybe just like the last hotel you were at. Did you write a Google review for it? Raise your hand if you wrote a Google review for it. Oh, one person, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 people. And there's quite a few people here. What if you were checking out, the checkout clerk is super nice, friendly, has a little chat with you, and then just before you leave, she goes, "Oh, I've got this iPad here. Would you mind rating us out of 5? Would you do it?" I would do it. It's easy. And this is exactly the feeling and the moment that you want to hook into with your app reviews. So this is the important bit. So does anyone asleep? Wake up now. How do you ask for reviews? You ask when the user is in a good mood. This is very important. And you know your app the most, so you'll know what's the user in a good mood. So they can't be in the middle of something. The worst time to ask would be probably either if they've just opened the app or if they're in the middle of putting their credit card details in. That would annoy you. So depending on what your app does, for example, if you're building an e-commerce app, a good time would be after they've just made a purchase. They've just got those awesome new shoes or awesome new headphones. They're happy, excited, they're high on that purchase, and you're like, "Hey, do you like our app?" That's the moment you want to catch. If you're doing, for example, a fitness app, it would be just when they've completed a challenge. If you're doing a social media app, it would be, if they've been on the app for maybe 10 minutes and they've liked a post or posted something or replied to someone. Now, I would very much recommend that you use a custom prompt when asking for reviews. And the cool thing about this is you can style it however you want. You will have your own app branding, own app style, own app wording, so it fits into your ambience. And you ask the user, "Hey, are you enjoying the app?" And the good thing about this is if they say that, "Yeah, not really," then maybe you misjudge the mood, or there's an opportunity for improvement. So if they're not happy, you now have an opportunity to ask them in long form what you could do better. The goal of this is you'll catch these ideas and fix them before other people actually go to the App Store to complain. And of course, if they say they like it, this is where you show your native prompt and hopefully catch that 5 stars. Of course, one thing to note, one of the reasons that we do this is, for example, on iOS, you can only show the native review prompt 3 times a year. So if you just spam people, Apple's going to prevent you. So that's why we have this misdirection on the way. And I just wanted to show you an example of I'm not the one that, independently came up with this brilliant idea. People do this in the wild. And this was, it was at 4 a.m. jet lag, but I was browsing on my phone, and this popped up. And it's basically very similar to what we've just been talking about. So on the left, we have a screen that says, "Hey, are you enjoying the app?" And it has 2 CTAs for not really and yes. And I had to do not really, so I'm sorry about the messed up analytics because I didn't like the app. And after that, they gave me another screen saying, "Oh, we're sorry. Are you up for giving us some feedback?" And when I tapped on feedback, I was taken to a long form Google Doc where I could just give them some feedback. All right, in summary, The average ratings on the Apple and Play stores are different. So on the Apple, the average rating is 4.5. On the Play Store, the average rating is around 4, which means that your targets can be a little bit different. So if you want a good rating on the App Store, it would be around 4.8, 4.9. On the Play Store, you can aim a bit lower. So 4.6, 4.7 is already good. Don't forget that some feedback is going to be out of your control. There's always going to be crazy people who are angry at the world and you in it. Don't let that frustrate you too much, but we do need to mitigate that in order to maintain a good rating. And in order to do that, we ask for reviews when the user is in a good mood. We show them the review prompt. If they say that they'd like to give us additional feedback, we provide a long form way for them to do that. I think that's all for me. Thank you so much.